What if a single sentence from Yuzuru Hanyu could bring back years of memories? Not a major announcement, not a competition result, not even a dramatic statement. Just a few simple words. And yet, for many fans, those words can feel surprisingly emotional. Why? Why does something so small, something that might sound ordinary to someone hearing it for the first time, have such a powerful effect on people who have followed Yuzuru Hanyu for years? The answer may be hidden not in the words themselves, but in everything that came before them. The victories, the setbacks, the injuries, the difficult moments, the Olympic memories, the transition from competitive skating to professional skating, and the countless performances that became part of the lives of his fans. Today, we are going to look at why Yuzuru Hanyu's words can sometimes feel much more powerful than they appear. Because when Yuzuru speaks, fans are not simply hearing a sentence. They are remembering a journey. And perhaps that is why one simple expression can suddenly bring tears to their eyes. Yuzuru Hanyu has never been an athlete who relied only on competition results to communicate with his audience. Of course, his Olympic achievements changed figure skating history. But over the years, something else became equally important. His ability to tell stories. On the ice, he could communicate emotions that were sometimes difficult to explain with words. Pain, hope, loneliness, determination, love, gratitude, and the desire to keep moving forward. That is why his transition to professional skating was so significant. When Yuzuru left competitive skating, many people wondered what would come next. There would no longer be the same competition schedule. No rankings. No judges determining whether he had won or lost. No medal waiting at the end of a program. Instead, Yuzuru entered a completely different world. A world where he could create his own stories. He could decide what he wanted to say. He could decide how the audience should experience the performance. And most importantly, he could explore parts of himself that might not have fit inside the traditional competitive format. This journey produced projects such as Gift, Re_Pray, and Echoes of Life. Each project had its own atmosphere and message. And in 2026, another important chapter arrived with Realive. The official concept describes Realive as a project that brings Yuzuru's previously created programs back as living performances once again. Think about what that means. It is not simply repeating the past. It is taking something that already happened and allowing it to exist again in the present. The music may be familiar. The choreography may remind fans of another time. The memories may come rushing back. But Yuzuru himself is not exactly the same person he was years ago. He has experienced more. He has learned more. He has changed. And therefore, even an old program can acquire a completely new meaning. This is one of the reasons fans become emotional. Because when Yuzuru performs something from his past, they are not only watching him. They are watching their own memories. They remember where they were when they first saw that program. They remember how they felt. They remember the competitions, the Olympic moments, the celebrations, the tears, and sometimes, they remember difficult periods in their own lives when Yuzuru's skating gave them something to hold on to. That is why his words can be so powerful. A simple, thank you, may not sound extraordinary. But when it comes from someone whose journey you have followed for years, it can carry an enormous amount of meaning. It can sound like gratitude for the people who supported him, gratitude for the people who watched his performances, gratitude for the people who stayed with him through difficult moments, and perhaps gratitude for the long journey itself. That is when an ordinary word becomes something much bigger. Yuzuru's relationship with his audience has always been unusual. He is not simply performing in front of people. He often creates a feeling that the audience is part of the story. This is especially powerful when his performances deal with memories, loss, hope, or the passage of time. For many fans, following Yuzuru has also meant following a part of their own lives. They grew older while watching him grow. They experienced changes in their own lives while seeing him face challenges on the ice. That creates a unique emotional connection. And when Yuzuru says something that reminds them of those years, the reaction can be immediate. Suddenly, the past comes back. A performance, a costume, A piece of music. A particular expression. A competition. A moment on the Olympic ice. Everything can return within seconds. This is why the emotional reaction is sometimes much stronger than people expect. The emotion is not necessarily about the sentence. It is about the memories attached to it. There is another important part of Yuzuru's story. His connection to Miyagi. For Yuzuru, Miyagi is not simply another location. It is connected to his childhood, his development as a skater, and one of the most difficult experiences of his life. The 2011 earthquake and tsunami profoundly affected the region and Yuzuru's own journey. He was still a teenager. And yet, despite the uncertainty and disruption around him, skating remained something he continued to return to. That history has remained part of his identity. This is why returning to Miyagi for major projects carries emotional significance for many fans. It can feel like returning to the beginning while simultaneously moving forward. And that combination is very characteristic of Yuzuru. He does not simply erase the past. He carries it. But carrying the past does not necessarily mean being trapped by it. Sometimes, it can become the foundation for the future. That may be one of the most important messages in Yuzuru's journey. You can remember what happened without allowing the past to determine where you go next. You can acknowledge pain without letting pain become your entire identity. And you can look back without stopping your journey forward. This is why fans often react so strongly when Yuzuru talks about the future. A phrase such as, next, again, or, from here, can feel much bigger when it comes from him. Because fans know how many times he has had to begin again. After injuries, after disappointments, after major competitions, after leaving competitive skating, and now, as a professional skater and creator, he continues to reinvent himself. That is what makes his current journey so fascinating. He is no longer trying to prove that he can win a competition. He is asking a different question. What can skating become? What can a performance communicate? How far can the boundaries between sport, music, theater, technology, and storytelling be pushed? Those questions have become central to his professional career. And that is why every new project creates curiosity. What will he do next? What story will he tell? What kind of performance will appear next? And perhaps most importantly, what will Yuzuru want to say? That last question matters because Yuzuru's skating has always been connected to his emotions and beliefs. He does not simply choose music because it sounds beautiful. A piece of music can become a language. A program can become a message. A performance can become a memory. And sometimes, a single sentence outside the rink can feel like an extension of that same artistic language. This is also why his collaboration with Yuzu has attracted attention. The connection between Yuzuru Hanyu and the music group Yuzu has created another emotional layer for fans. Their collaboration brings together skating and music, two forms of expression that have repeatedly shaped Yuzuru's career. And because music can carry memories so strongly, combining it with Yuzuru's skating creates another opportunity for fans to connect the past with the present. That is perhaps the central theme of Yuzuru's story right now. The past and the future. Memory and hope. Loss and recovery. Competition and expression. Athlete and artist. The teenager who once dreamed of Olympic success is now an experienced professional creator. Yet something fundamental remains. The desire to communicate, the desire to connect, and the desire to keep moving forward. This is why fans sometimes say that Yuzuru has changed, while at the same time saying that he has not changed at all. It sounds contradictory, but it actually makes perfect sense. His circumstances have changed. His career has changed. His responsibilities have changed. His artistic possibilities have expanded. But the core of who he is can still be recognized. That is the person fans first connected with. The person who continued despite setbacks. The person who kept searching for a better performance. The person who treated the ice as more than just a competition surface. And now, the professional Yuzuru is taking that same determination into a new era. This is why Real Live is so interesting. The title itself suggests bringing something back to life. But perhaps it also represents something deeper. Memories can come back to life. Old programs can come back to life. Past emotions can come back to life. And even a previous version of yourself can be revisited from a completely different perspective. Imagine watching a program you first saw years ago. You know the music. You know the movements. You may even remember exactly where you were when you first watched it. But then you see Yuzuru perform it again. Suddenly, the program feels different. Because you are different. And Yuzuru is different. The world is different. That is the power of time. The same performance can become a completely new experience. And that is why his fans are so emotionally invested in what comes next. They are not simply waiting for another skating show. They are waiting to see what the next chapter will mean. Will it be another story? Another collaboration? Another performance? Another interpretation of something from his past? Or something nobody expects? We do not know. And that uncertainty is part of the excitement. Yuzuru has repeatedly shown that he can surprise people. He can take familiar ideas and present them differently. He can take something personal and turn it into a shared experience. And he can take a moment from the past and give it new life. That is why fans listen carefully when he speaks. They know that behind a seemingly simple statement there may be a deeper feeling. Perhaps he is talking about gratitude. Perhaps he is talking about the future. Perhaps he is simply describing how he feels at that moment. But fans naturally connect those words with the larger story. And that is where the emotion comes from. It is not necessarily because Yuzuru intended to make everyone cry. It is because his words arrive after years of shared memories. A fan who has followed him for 10 years does not hear the same sentence as someone who discovered him yesterday. The words may be identical. The emotional meaning is not. For one person, thank you, is just 2 words. For another, it can represent 10 years of memories. For another, it can bring back the night they watched an Olympic performance. For another, it may remind them of a difficult period when skating gave them hope. That is the invisible history behind Yuzuru's relationship with his fans. And perhaps this is why the reaction can seem so intense. People are not only reacting to Yuzuru. They are reacting to their own memories. Their own growth. Their own struggles. Their own moments of happiness. Yuzuru's career has become a kind of timeline. Every era has its own memories. And whenever he enters a new era, fans naturally look back at everything that came before. Competitive Yuzuru, Olympic Yuzuru, professional Yuzuru, creator Yuzuru, and now, whatever comes next. The story is still being written. That may be the most emotional part of all. There is no final chapter yet. There is no moment where everything has been completely concluded. There is still another performance. Another idea. Another possibility. Another moment when Yuzuru might step onto the ice and make people feel something they did not expect. And maybe that is what fans are really waiting for. Not simply another achievement. Not simply another beautiful performance. But another moment that makes them feel connected. Connected to the music. Connected to the story. Connected to Yuzuru. And perhaps connected to themselves. So, when Yuzuru Hanyu suddenly says something that makes fans emotional, maybe the real question is not, why did that sentence make them cry? Maybe the better question is, what memories did that sentence bring back? Because behind every emotional reaction, there is a story. A fan's story. A memory. A moment. A journey. And Yuzuru's ability to awaken those memories may be one of the most powerful parts of his legacy. He has spent years communicating through movement. Now, even his words can become part of that same language. A language of memory. A language of gratitude. A language of hope. And perhaps, most importantly, a language of moving forward. So as we look toward the next chapter of Yuzuru Hanyu's career, one thing remains certain. We may not know exactly what he will say next. We may not know what his next project will be. We may not know what the next performance will look like. But we know that his story is still moving. And as long as he continues to create, there will be new memories waiting to be made. Maybe one day, fans will look back at 2026 the same way they look back at other important periods of his career. They will remember the performances, the music, the announcements, the unexpected words, and perhaps they will remember one particular sentence and say, "That was the moment I realized how much his journey meant to me." That is the strange power of Yuzuru Hanyu. He can turn a performance into a memory. He can turn a memory into an emotion. And sometimes, he can turn just a few words into something that stays with people for years. So now I want to ask you something. What is the one sentence, one message, or one moment from Yuzuru Hanyu that you have never forgotten? Was it something he said after a performance? Something he said during an interview? Something he said to his fans? Or perhaps it was not a sentence at all. Maybe it was simply the moment he stepped onto the ice. Tell us in the comments. Because every fan has their own Yuzuru Hanyu story. And maybe your story will remind someone else of theirs. The next chapter has not been written yet. And perhaps that is why fans are emotional. Because after everything Yuzuru Hanyu has already given them, they still believe there is something more to come. Another story. Another performance. Another memory. Another reason to watch the ice in silence as he begins to skate. And another moment when a few simple words might once again make millions of hearts stop for a second. Because Yuzuru Hanyu's story is not simply about what happened in the past. It is about what comes next. And for now, that next chapter remains